Hello, everybody, and welcome to Black Enough, Man Enough Live. I am Daniel P. Calderon. I am the founder of #Work From Home and the founder of Entrepreneurs of Tomorrow. And I'm so glad that you have decided to join us tonight for the final and the fourth episode of Black Enough, Man Enough Live. This has been such a great journey. We have heard so many great stories for so many people in G's life and in people outside that could add a little bit more color to this amazing book that G. Smalls has written. So a little bit about what we do is that we put on virtual events for a cause. And one of the causes that we're working on is the internship for high school students, teaching them the foundations of entrepreneurship. And what better person to partner with if G. Small, which is one of the ultimate entrepreneurs. He owns the Virgil's restaurant, and he has done so many different projects with he and his partner, which is going to be joining us tonight for tonight's episode of Husband and Husband. And a lot of people talk about bagels, or or ask me and my partner. We've only been together for 3 years. How do I get like what you have? And I have nothing on these gentlemen right here. So I'm gonna introduce G. Smalls, and he's gonna introduce the show, and then do a little bit of a reading of his book with us. Hey G, what's going on? Sorry, I think you're on mute. Take yourself off of mute, man.
Yep. So hey.
hey, fourth and final episode of this particular partnership, and I know the world. You're not stopping, and you're going to have a lot of really amazing shows that we're all going to support. But how do you feel coming to the fourth week?
I mean, this is like the fourth. The book has been out for about a month now. I've gotten my feet wet with being in front of the camera again, and being to have conversations with people in the community, and just talk about important subjects that I think that we kind of don't talk about. So I'm excited to be able to bring that. The support has been overwhelming. It's bittersweet that this installment is ending because the conversations have been so great, but I'm looking forward to what's next. And just grateful for what we've been able to do over the past 4 weeks.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit about what you're going to give us a peek. And I don't know if it's a peek at this point because so many people have read the book. And obviously, we want way more people to buy the book. So if you haven't bought the book already, please purchase it and join the Beam Challenge. So what are you going to be reading for us tonight?
So tonight, it was really, really hard for me to choose the passage because there are a lot of different things that, I could talk about as it relates to husband and my relationship with Juan over the past 12 years. But I chose a passage tonight that I think that is going to be impactful. It's a subject that a lot of times we talk about in the community, but I feel like tonight is going to kind of elevate that conversation just a bit because I think that we're going to be able to, dig in mentally and emotionally on what the subject really means in relationships and for us as individuals as well. So I'm really excited about the expertise that we're going to be able to add to the conversation. And a lot of times that piece is missing. So
awesome. So yeah. I have a clear page in my notes app ready to write a whole bunch of notes. So without further ado, everyone give G a virtual applause and Black Enough, Man Enough.
Thank you, Daniel. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it, and then we'll go ahead and start the conversation. Tonight, this is my book, Black Enough, Man Enough. I hope those of you who have picked up the book are enjoying what you have read thus far, enjoying what you have already read. And those who haven't, pick it up. So this is coming from the chapter called No Rules, and it's chapter 25. And I am reading from page 293. I had to have a cocktail tonight to have this conversation. I hope you got one too. And please, I encourage you guys to ask questions in the comments. We'll get to them at the end of the show. So here it goes. On the way back from dropping them off at the airport, Juan turned down the music and said to me, "So, I've really been thinking, we should go back to opening our relationship. I don't see the need in putting those boundaries on us. I wasn't really bothered by you having sex with Reggie. Hell, it even turned to be on a little bit. But I did not like that you broke our agreement. Then I thought, why do we have that agreement? What is the real point of it? For me, I know it's about feeling it's the right thing, even though it doesn't naturally feel like the right thing. It's like, even though I know there is nothing wrong with an open relationship, it still conflicts with traditions and rules of how I was brought up. It's about breaking those old thought patterns. That's the challenge. Yeah, you are right. I say we need to work on being free from that and not conform because that does not work. We know that what we have and what we share. Sex does not define or break that. It never has for us. Ha! You are right. We would be over a long time ago if that was the case, I laughed. Sure would have. So we good? No more of those rules? Yes, we are good. Let's just focus on growing together and being free from norms. Let's continue to create our way. We are so much more than husbands. We are partners in life. I love you for allowing me to be so open with you. I love you for loving me in all of my fuck ups and mistakes. Thank you for being the most security I have ever experienced in my life, Juan. If it were not for Juan, I would have not been able to reach my present level of self-awareness. It is because of the space in which we allow each other to grow. I am who I am today. We understood that we weren't here to control or change, but to acknowledge and accept one another in the ways we show up in the world. He cannot make me happy, nor could I make him happy. We got the point. This was a pure, unconditional love that I have never shared with another human being. We knew that it was love with no conditions and love with no limitations. That's the kind of love every soul desires, ours included. We allowed each other that kind of love, and it is because of this love that Juan and I have been able to continue to evolve and journey together in life. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on my first guest, my beautiful and amazing husband, lover, friend, my partner in life. You know, if it was possible for somebody to be everything to a person, it would definitely be my husband.
Oh.
Juan, you have been such an amazing person in my life. I don't know where I would be without you. And so I wanted to start this conversation off by just showing you love and appreciation.
Thank you so much.
For holding me accountable, for challenging me, for supporting me, for allowing me to be who I am, and just loving me all the way through it. And I stand here today, Black enough and man enough because of my partnership with you. So thank you, and everybody, welcome Juan. I didn't expect to get emotional. Juan is the emotional one in the relationship.
Right. So I always love it when I get to see you. It's a kind of a double-edged sword because I love when you express emotion like that in a visible sort of way. But then I also am so protective over you that I'm like, oh my God, I hate to see him, the crying, even tears of joy is just like, it's triggering for me. So, but I'm working on allowing you to just express those emotions and me just receiving the love as well without the need to do anything, you know?
Yeah. So I want to thank you also, and I thanked you in private, but I want to thank you publicly for allowing me to share this part of my life because it's a large part of your life.
Yeah.
So, you know, thank you.
You're welcome.
For allowing me to do that. And so the first question I have for you is, how does it feel right now hearing the passage that I just read and reading that to the world, essentially, and anybody who has access to it? What is that like for you to hear that?
Here I was getting a bit emotional as well because obviously I read the book several times, but hearing it yet again, it really just reinforces what I live every day. And that's the liberation that we've come to achieve in our relationship, and the realization that, you know, you aren't my person to control and I'm not your person to control. And the moment I grasped that, as you're reading that, I had a bunch of moments in my head, conversations that we had that centered around control and dominating and ownership, and how once we just released all of that, how we were really able to kind of actualize our true authentic selves, and really be able to open up in deeper ways that we've never had been able to before. So it was pretty special. It was pretty special. I was fighting back tears. I also had a little cocktail. I had to stop drinking. So I was like, it's really gonna make me tear up. But it was amazing. And another thing, like as you were reading, and people have commented on this, it felt like you're just talking to me, like you're just talking to the reader. And that hits deeply on an emotional level for me because of that style. So it was a gamut of emotions in that brief little passage.
Okay. Well, I'm glad it was a good experience. I mean, because
go ahead.
I was just wondering, this is a topic that people talk about a lot, open relationships. And I know it's been, you know, chatter about our relationship and what might be going on in our relationship. So, you know, we have been pretty transparent and open, and, you know, people who come into our space, you know, we are kind of open with conversation, and this might not be a surprise to some because we talk to people, but
not always.
Not always. But so this is a truly monumental point in both of our lives, because this is not stuff that we have just, you know, kind of just talked about. But I think it's just an important conversation, and it's a part of us. You know, I think a part.
Hello? Oh, I was hearing some feedback. I think a part of it is you are a very, very open and expressive person. You will tell it all. I'm a very, very, very private person, almost secretive. But I think that's a testament to the way we were brought up. And so in you writing this book and knowing the subjects that you were going to talk about and things of that nature, I think it's kind of forced me to reconcile my own values and to reconcile my own emotions and thought processes around all of the subjects, not just open relationship. I'm like, are you there?
Yeah.
Not just open relationship. So, yeah, it's really interesting to be on here having this conversation with you about this particular subject matter.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody, this it's I had to zoom in on a particular topic because we only have an hour, and I just thought this was important. But it expounds so much beyond that. But my second question to you is, what was it like for you to read our story through my eyes?
Well, it was a bit challenging. Because number one, I was like, well, that ain't how it happened. Or number two, like, that ain't what I remember. So having to remove myself from your process and understand that you as an individual have experiences and those memories are solely yours. And who am I to project my feelings and thoughts and experiences onto you? So I wanted to step back, and I forced myself to step back and say, just read and take it in and do your best to not change G in his writing and his experiences and the retelling of these situations. Now, reading some of the situations kind of brought back up reopened old wounds that I didn't realize were just had a Band-Aid on them, and you know
and which we had to hash out. I mean, we had to talk about.
Yeah, I thought they were closed up and done and put on, but then reading the situations really, really affected me. Kind of pissed me off in some instances. So we had to go back, and I'm sure that's what you were dealing with in retelling all of these stories also. So we had to go back and forth on some of the things. Some of the things I was just like, no, you can't put that in there, or no, I want you to rewrite that to be more in alignment with what I felt the truth was. And sometimes for y'all out there, sometimes people be like, no.
Yeah, that's just not my experience. And this is very important, though. I think this is very important. This is very important because I think that with this, and this has been common for a lot of people and experiences that I wrote about in the book, is that we all are on our individual journeys, and then we experience each other to take us further along on our individual journeys, and so we get separate things out of those situations. We are supposed to process them in different ways. We are supposed to feel different things, and my experience might not align with your experience in the same situations, but they are both to be understood and respected.
Right.
And I think that's that's kind of how you.
And I want people to know that doesn't mean that it's not true. Yeah. Like everything that you're telling is truth. Now, our truths may align in certain areas, and they may differ and veer off on different roads, but that doesn't negate the fact that it's the truth.
Well, I think I told a very beautiful love story between us two.
I think you did.
That's very true. I mean, so how did it feel to read, about that? Like for me, like you were, if there was a savior in my life, it was you.
Huh.
If there was someone that was, that came to rescue me and to help heal me, it was you. And I feel like that's a very important part of the story and your purpose in my life. I mean, so how did it feel to read, those parts? Let's not just focus on that.
Well, I was just focusing on what the subject matter is. But I agree. Definitely a beautiful love story, transformative 1000%. Reading it really, to be quite honest, it just reinforced what I had already been feeling and already knew. Now, to hear you say, like, if there was a savior, it would be me, like that, like my first thought is like, whoa, that's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of responsibility right there. But then in the next breath is like, well, it's already happened, so that means I've already measured up. So it's a beautiful space. And I think the beauty with us is that we're constantly evolving and changing. And so to read about the past and to relive those memories, it really showed me how far we've come. Because I know initially I was very insecure, very controlling, very closed off in a lot of ways. But reading this story, particularly from your vantage point, it was a demonstration of growth. Not to mention, I mean, like I said, I cried, I laughed, I was pissed off, I was turned on. I was like everything. Every emotion I could possibly think of, I felt it. So that was a great experience for me.
And so I'm going to ask you this last question before I bring on our other guest. What is your secret, your little secret in dealing with all that is G? I'm a multifaceted person. I could be a strong force and personality, but what is your secret to making us work in your own little way? Like knowing G, what is your way to kind of just, make it work?
To be honest, laughter. And knowing you and your weird sense of humor, like you kind of make a joke out of everything, even when it's kind of serious.
Thanks, Mom.
So it's forcing myself to find the laughter. And it doesn't always come right away. I will say that. But to be able to just shrug stuff off, say, and not take it personally, find the laughter, and move on. And really, I kind of have a mantra where I say to myself, it's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about you. And I have a tendency to make everything about me.
Sure do.
No matter what, like I find a way to make it about me, whether it's positive or negative. So really telling myself it ain't about you. And really, but to be quite honest, like, yeah, you have a strong ass personality. Sometimes you piss me off, but 9 times out of 10, you're making me happy. I love being around you. I love interacting with you. I love just looking at your face. I love just all of that shit. So it's like the moments in which you're difficult to get along with or difficult to be around, I just say, that's just G.
Yeah, and those are, few and far
Few
in
and far
between, because
between.
actually an amazing guy. So, I mean, I feel like one of the things that has really helped us was therapy.
Yeah.
Hands down, therapy was one of the most instrumental things in our life, and we're both big proponents of therapy. And a little bit about, before I bring on these guests, a little bit about Juan and I's sexual history.
Because that's where it started.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a Cliff Notes version because I want you to read the book, but just to set a little context. So when Juan and I first met each other, we both wanted the same things. We were looking for a relationship. We were looking for something serious. Right? And so with that, as a lot of couples do, we decided no sex, right? We just gonna take this time to get to know each other. It's gonna be no sex. And when I had met Juan was I've had all these sexual experiences in my life. I was wild. I've experienced everything you could think of sexually. And now that I'm ready to settle down, sex is not a big deal for me. I can go the rest of my life without having sex, and I will be perfectly fine. Now, hold on.
Let me just add to that. I know, but I need to add to the narrative. So also, it's because I knew me, and up until that point, it was like, if I had sex with you too soon, I wouldn't want to fuck with you no more.
I didn't ask you yet.
Oh, okay.
And for me, I was on the opposite end of the spectrum where I'm like, I need to have sex every day. If I can't have sex, then I'm gonna die today. Yeah. I just want to set that premise for where we started off in our relationship, on two ends of the spectrum. And for me, I hadn't had those experiences that Juan had. I hadn't been as liberated as he had. For me, sex, when it was time to get in a relationship, that was the time to experience all of your sexual joy and yada, yada, yada. Like, now was the time to go hard on sex. So we were kind of like on two separate ends on that right there. And so when, we got to the point we started having sex, sex was great. We had great chemistry. Sex was great, whatever the case may be. Now, between 2 to 3 years, I feel like we started experiencing a little bit more challenges because all along I've been wanting to have more and more sex. It ain't enough for me. We're not having sex enough. And Juan is like, I'm cool. If I don't feel like having sex, I'm not gonna make myself. So it was that. We was constantly kind of bumping heads a lot. And so we decided, everything was great in the relationship, except this was such a challenge for us in the relationship. And so we decided that it was time to seek therapy, which I think was such a great decision for us. And so with that, I'm gonna go ahead and bring on my next guest. Unfortunately, our therapist over the past 10 years is experiencing a crisis with a client right now, so she was not able to join. So I'm a little disappointed about that, but everything is meant to happen how the way it's supposed to happen. But my other guest that I have on, I think, is going to be very instrumental to this conversation because he's a sex therapist, he's a mental therapist, he's well known throughout the community. He's had many experiences with couples like Juan and I. And so welcome to the show, Machell. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is I was backstage listening to you guys, and it's enlightening, and it's actually quite good motivation, I think, for people to hear you have such candid conversation. Of course, there's a book, but there's lots of books out there that people can read about different types of relationship. I think hearing it from you and your partner is something entirely different. So I appreciate you having this platform, and obviously having me on is I appreciate that as well.
No, you're welcome. I'm so grateful for you being here. And I think I met you probably. Then we met on Facebook first, and then you end up moving to Atlanta. And
I did. I
yeah,
think
we
when we
just kind of like
first met,
gelled.
we gelled. I was still living in London at the time, and I was just really, I appreciate everything that you presented on social media. I think that's what it was.
Yeah,
And then obviously
yeah,
when I moved here, it was just an instant connection, and we've been sort of like just in communication for the whole time. So I think at
yeah. And
one
I
point
appreciate.
you did reach out and wanted to have therapy,
Hmm.
and we kind of talked about that a little bit, but it never really quite happened. So I'm
Yeah,
glad you have a therapist that you see regularly, and she's been helpful. So that's
yeah.
exciting.
She's been amazing, and I think that what you're doing is so revolutionary because you have conversations that you know from an expert perspective in our community, from men who look like us.
Mm.
And although, these are things we talk about in our community, this goes beyond gender, this goes beyond sexuality, this goes beyond one particular person, but it's really good to hear perspective from somebody who looks like us. So my first question to you, Machell, is I want to know what your thoughts on monogamy and open relationships are.
That's very interesting. I mean, my thoughts on both of these things, I think, are from a perspective of studying sexuality for as many years as I have, but also from experiencing sexuality in a way that, other therapists don't necessarily get to experience. So I think, first of all, I think everyone knows what monogamy is, but it's very misconstrued depending on who you're talking to. And
Okay.
I also think it's extremely important to mention that monogamy isn't for everyone. So while it's still seen as the gold standard in terms of what a healthy relationship is, it really doesn't work for every couple. It doesn't work for everyone. So first of all, recognizing what works for you is very important.
Mhm.
As far as open relationships, I talk a lot in my work and in my writing about consensual non-monogamy. And consensual
Hmm.
non-monogamy is a whole range of sexual experiences, one of which includes having an open relationship. It's not the only type of consensual non-monogamy, but it's one that's mostly recognized, and it's one that people talk about a lot. Um, and I think as part of consensual non-monogamy, having an open relationship definitely has to be one that all parties involved has taken account of what that actually means. What does an open relationship mean? Because that means something different entirely to the people involved. But also having to explain that to your friends, having to explain that to your coworkers, having to explain that to your children, having to explain that to your preacher or your pastor, and all of these different facets of your life that we belong to, it then becomes complicated. And what does that actually mean? You're having an open relationship. What does that mean? Does that mean you can fuck whoever you want? Does that mean that you can sleep
Yeah.
with the pool boy when he comes to clean the pool?
Yeah.
Does it mean that you do it when we're on holiday, or does it mean that you do it when I don't want to have sex with you? What does open
Mhm.
relationship actually mean? So I think, a lot of times people see open relationship as just a way of getting out of monogamy, but it actually can be much more complex than being in a monogamous relationship.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that you said that because, throughout Juan and I's experience, over the past 12 years, in the passage that I read, I believe that we were probably maybe years 6 to 7 in. But throughout that experience, we both always kind of held on to, relationships are about agreement. And it actually
Right.
took a while, I believe, from my perspective, and Juan can speak from his perspective. I think it actually took a while for me to label our relationship as an open relationship because we negotiated agreements. Open relationships, like you said, can mean one particular thing. But for us, it really started off with a baby step, if you will. You know, it was very, very small section into opening up our relationship. And for us, and you'll read this more in the story, it happened because one of us was desiring certain things out of the relationship that we wasn't necessarily being fulfilled in.
Right.
And so I think for two men in our community, a lot of times that happens.
Are you not wanting to speak specifically about that?
No, I will.
Right.
I will. And so what I will say is that, you know, we had gotten to a point. I've always been a versatile guy. Juan, in the beginning of our relationship, alluded that he was pretty versatile and sometimes, but throughout our relationship, we found that wasn't exactly the case. And so for me, I felt like I wasn't, at least this is where it started, and opened our eyes up to so much more, because it wasn't really about that. But for us, it started off because I needed to get something sexually that he was not comfortable with.
You like, I think you're gesturing and all of that instead of just saying it.
I kind of want people to read the book. I know, but you try to figure out.
You say it.
Like, he wanted to penetrate, and that was the big thing. It's like, I feel like I should be able to penetrate. I want to penetrate. I want to penetrate. I want to penetrate. And like, I wanted to give that. And so,
right. So you wanted to be a top, and he didn't want that to be to bomb for you.
He didn't want that to be the only dynamic. And so in seeking therapy and having realized some past traumas that I was experiencing, that was creating a mental block for me when I'm in certain positions and things of that nature. I said, well, if I'm unable to give this to you, then by all means, I think you should get it elsewhere.
Go find it somewhere else.
I'm trying not to give too much of the book away.
Right.
That is how it started. And I feel like that's very common in our relationships. And Machell, I just kind of want you to speak a little bit about that, because I know you counsel a lot of same-sex relationships. And I'm sure you do.
And let me just also say this. I know I just said it right now, like it was just easy, like it just was like that. It was probably one of the most difficult decisions that I had to make up until that moment, because like of all the implications and the stigmas and the judgments and what are other people going to say and blah, 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 blah. So having to grapple with all of that.
Yeah. I want to give you that context. Like, the conversation started off at 2.5 to 3 years. The relationship didn't really reach new agreements until almost years 5 to 6. So we kind of like, you know, we had years and years of support and therapy to bring us to a certain point. But
and I'm also sure you had lots of disagreements leading up to that point before you had a consensus of what your relationship was going to look like. And I think, you know, you've had 12 years of evolving. Lots of couples don't get to have those years of evolving. And the reason why you were able to evolve your relationship was because you had something that was tying you guys together. There was something more than just your sexual desires and appetite that meant that you had a base to work on. And you had something to kind of ground you as you're evolving your sexuality, as you're evolving your work together within the context of what your relationship was going to look like. And I think what I see in a lot of couples is that lack of communication, that lack of understanding for what their actual needs are. And I think it's very difficult when you don't know what your needs are as an individual to actually engage in a couple with someone else who's also struggling with what their needs are. So I think I see a lot of, you know, kind of back and forth within gay couples or, you know, same gender loving couples, where they just don't know what works for them. And therefore it's very hard to kind of engage someone else and say, well, this is what I want, and negotiate. So in order for you to negotiate, you need to know where you're coming from, and you need to know
you have to be honest.
And you have to be
You have
honest.
to be honest. And a lot of people are not willing to be honest because they think that the way they feel is going to, it has nothing to do with the partner. Like it's going to
Right.
some worthiness of the partner. And I know for me, I attached my worth, my self-worth to how much Juan wanted to have sex with me.
Right.
And I learned from therapy that was due to some trauma and molestation I had experienced in my life, and how I tied my somebody's sexual desire for me to my self-worth. So when I met this man, and I'm so thankful that Juan is who he is, and we both were on the same page as soon as we got in when it came to sex, because I do feel like that would have been the focus. And once that would have worn off, and I would have been like, well, what do we have?
Right.
Because it was just so much more than that. And we did hold out, and I did feel like that's not what he wanted out of me, which in the beginning for me, that was hard for me. Like, why is it so easy for you to abstain from sex?
Because so much of your value was placed on sex. And
Exactly.
I think that's very common with the world we live in. We have so much value placed on sex. You know, it's how you look, how am I attracted, how many numbers am I getting, how many likes do I have, you know, who wants me, you know, if you know, and I think once we begin to shift our value systems, we begin to appreciate ourselves a lot more and the relationship we have with sex. And I think one of the things that I talk about a lot is having a healthy relationship with sex. So many men do not have healthy relationships with sex within our community. And that's fundamental across the board. And you've experienced it. You know, we've all experienced it where we're interacting with someone who's placed a huge amount of value around sex. What position they're in, for example, right?
Yeah.
You know, how many times they're having sex, the kind of sex they're having, who they're having sex with. And I think when that happens, and when you don't necessarily understand what's happening, then you make lots of decisions that doesn't actually suit you in the long run. And it's
most of the time you're not even aware of the root of those decisions.
Right.
For me, I want to talk about two things. For me, I think one thing that I realized when we decided to start opening the relationship and going through different agreements, one of the things that was interesting for me is that, you know, when I got into the relationship with Juan, I was always paranoid about him cheating on me.
Right.
Oh, he's going to cheat on me. Oh my God, what happens if, like, that was my biggest fear, that if he had somebody, our relationship was going to be over.
And that was your insecurities that was
my insecurity. Right. That was about because then it was going to be about me and me not being good enough. And when we decided that we were going to open that up, cheating on me and having sex with somebody, when we got to that point of the agreement, was not a deal breaker anymore.
Right.
And when I tell you that, for me, I had no idea the impact it was going to have on me. It released so much pressure of the relationship, of worrying about him cheating on me. Like, that's in our community, in most relationships, that's the most devastating thing that can happen, is if he cheated on me or he had sex with somebody. And that was such a big fear for me. And I feel like beyond, we can have sex with other people, whatever the case may be, that was such a powerful transformation in our relationship and an amount of release. And I want to ask you, Juan, that's the way I experienced it. And I want to know if that was your experience as well. Because I know I was a lot more paranoid about the cheating thing and the insecurity thing because of my past experience. But I want to know if it was the same or a different impact for you.
If the initial opening phase?
Yeah, like,
because it was
how I felt about the release of that cheating aspect.
So I don't, and stop me if I'm going too deep into the story. But the first phase, it was like only you.
Yeah.
That was.
And you're giving away all the nuggets.
But what I'm saying, for me,
you guys should have talked about this before you came online.
But then it would be like low force. But the thing is, like, from that perspective, in that initial phase, I kind of felt left out. Right. So initially, it was like, okay, that's fine since I'm not able to do this. Yes, I would allow certain things. And for me, there was all kinds of feelings. One that's sticking out right now was like inadequacy, because I'm unable to pleasure my partner in certain ways. It's like I'm a bad husband, because are we supposed to be everything to our partners? It took some time to realize that no, we're not. And you got your own shit that you have to deal with too. So like, why are you unable to please him in these ways? And like I said, I had to tell myself some very, very hard truths. And Cheryl helped me to get to this level of understanding, where I was dealing with a situation that happened where this guy was forcing himself on me. At the time, I didn't take it as a sexual violence,
Sexual assault.
but my body did, and it had carried that for years. So much so that when I feel a body on me, I go back to that moment. So it was all of these mental blocks. So working through all of that, and then the many different iterations, ultimately, I feel liberated.
Right.
Mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, across the board, just liberated, because I understand and I know that we're together not because of the type of sex that we have or what we do for one another, but because we want to be. We choose to be. It's a choice. We choose every aspect of our relationship. It's an intentional choice. So for me, that's the ultimate type of relationship that I want to have. So that's where I've since landed on that whole open journey. And I ain't really hate the term open. I like the term that you use, Machell. What did you say?
Consensual non-monogamy.
Consensual non-monogamy. I like that. I'm going to adopt that term.
Well, you know what? And let me ask this, because this is real, and we're human. How have you dealt with the jealousy that comes along with being able to experience other people? Because that's a real emotion. I mean, just because you get a point of having disagreement does not mean that jealousy goes away.
Right.
So how do you deal with that, Juan?
First,
have you?
I talk to myself. I do. But really emotionally dealing with it, it's really just delving deeper and asking myself questions and not stopping. Like when I answer a question, it's really just asking yourself, why are you feeling this? Why now? What about then? Like, and digging deeper. And if I ultimately find that, you know what, I just don't like this shit, then I'll come to you and be like, look, truth moment, we need to talk about our agreements, because I'm not feeling it for whatever reason. But it's really, like you said, I think you summed it up. It's being honest. It's being honest with myself and what I'm willing to deal with, what I'm not, what makes me comfortable, what makes me uncomfortable. And trusting and knowing that you're in this for us and not a piece of ass. And so, and I shouldn't even say that, because I also don't think that when you open your relationship, it's all about just fucking. So that's a different.
Glad you said that.
I'm
glad you said that, because that's a segue, and I'm gonna bring you in here right here, Machell, because for me, and also for Juan, we found out that, starting with these new agreements, that shit opened up such a deeper level of liberation and freedom for us in our relationship overall. And one thing our therapist, Cheryl, helped us to get to a point of stop placing rules and ownership over each other in our relationship. And that shit has freed us so much. And I think the fact that the sex part of it kind of was a gateway into the level of liberation that we experience to be ourselves in the relationship. And I want you to expound on that, and how we often get into these relationships and then our partner becomes a slave to our happiness and having to follow all these different rules in order to be a good partner.
So I think there's a lot to unpick in that, and we could talk for hours about how emotions show up in relationships. First of all, I think, when we have relationships, we somehow think that relationship is going to fill the voids that we've had all our lives.
Right.
We expect that by loving someone or by having them love us, that somehow the voids of our childhood traumas or our young adult traumas are going to go away. So that we then put that expectation on the other person. If you love me, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
You know, and that's just unfair on yourself, and it's unfair for that other person. And you know, when you said you can't be everything for someone, nobody is. Nobody can be everything for someone else. And when you see all these love stories, you're my everything, you're my, you know, it's
The
not
lie.
real. It's not realistic to have that expectation that this one person is going to be your everything for the rest of your life. And I think once you approach that with that honesty and that understanding that this person is only going to do as much as he's able to do or she's able to do, you know, and not what I want them to do or what I want them to be for me,
Right.
then it takes away that pressure. And I think also as well, when you think about a consensual non-monogamous relationship, that involves more than just sex, you know, sex. And I think when we shape and frame open relationship, most people associate an open relationship means that you can fuck other people. That's kind of in our community, that's the kind of equation that people make. It's, oh, they're in an open relationship, so they're fucking other people. But sometimes what having a non-consensual monogamous relationship means is that you're allowed to have experiences, emotional experiences with other people. So, you know, you get your emotional needs met by different ways and in different sources. And one could be your main partner, the person that you're partnered with, you're married, you have a spouse, your husband. And then other times it could just be having a moment with someone else who doesn't occupy that space, you know, and having that emotional need being met by someone who is very much, you know, not a partner, not someone who you'd want to be a partner with, but someone who gives you a certain aspect of your emotional needs that you're not able to get from your partner. So it's more than just having a sexual encounter with someone else.
A good analogy that just popped into my head is like people who don't want kids, but they just want to be an auntie. You know, like they can take kids and have a great time, but they want to just give them back.
Right.
Like that,
or you could be a great godparent, you know.
Right. Right.
You know, you could be, and that comes with communication. It comes with being able to communicate your feelings, your thoughts, and your emotions. And as men, particularly as Black gay men, we were never taught to do that. You know, a young Black man who his parents or grandparents or elders suspect is going to be gay, they want to get rid of that as much as possible. So no, you're not allowed to cry. No, you're not allowed to tell anyone how you feel about, you know, anything. So immediately what happens is that child begins to conform to the society he's in and shut in or internalize all these emotions. So when it gets to him having conversations with sexual partners, he's not able to negotiate his feelings. In his mind, in his conditioning, that's not good. I can't express my feelings to this person. So you get into this whole relationship not knowing how to feel, not knowing how to think, and not knowing how to express your emotions. What's that going to do to your relationship? And what's that going to do to your partner? You do everything in secret. You hide. You know, you never say how you really feel. Someone pissed you off, and your only, you know, experience of that is to be angry. Instead of saying, actually, you know what, I'm really hurt by that.
Right.
I was really disappointed in the way you did that. I really thought that you didn't think about my feelings in that way when you did that, you know. And I think if we can encourage men, particularly gay men, to be more open with their emotions, then they'll make better partners.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I feel like, you know, when you hold those secrets in, all that's going to do is fester and grow resentment for your partner, and it drives you farther apart. That's like the work in the relationship is continuously being vulnerable, because, you know, you can think something like, oh, we're taught not to be sensitive, and if we bring up a certain thing that bother us, then it's like, damn, am I a little bitch because I was affected by something he said to me, and do I bring this up now because he's gonna think that's petty? But it affects you and then there's a distance
Right.
that you create between one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then also just in terms of, gay men and this idea of being a top or a bottom. If you're a top and you're fucking someone, does that mean that you then can't cry afterwards? Does anyone want a
Right.
top who's going to be crying about his emotion, or does that make you, oh, I shouldn't have made him fuck me. Look at him being a little bitch, kind
Right.
of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's all these stereotypes that people have to live up to, and we perpetuate that in the gay culture. We perpetuate, what does a top look like? What does a bottom look like? What does he wear? What does he do? How does he act in public?
Right.
And it's something that the wider society does, but we do it to ourselves as well. And being able to be vulnerable. I say this all the time. Vulnerability is not a weakness. It's a
No, it's
strength.
not. It's a strength. It makes
Probably the
you.
most
It
strong
makes you
thing to do.
so much stronger.
Right.
And as this conversation is getting up to an hour, I want to bring up one thing before I bring in some guest questions. And so one thing I talk about in the book is sexual trauma. And Juan
Mm.
touched a little bit on his sexual trauma. I talk about my sexual trauma, how that's affected me. It's affected me in a way in which how I value my self-worth. It has brought up performance anxiety. It has brought up premature ejaculation. It's brought up all of those things. And I know me and you have talked about this before, but it's something that we just don't talk about, not only in the LGBT community, but we don't talk about these things as Black men, period, because those
Yeah.
are things that are supposed to be weaknesses. But it's a lot of things, it's a lot of what we experience. And I know that I've even found myself at one point in my life being more comfortable in a submissive role because I was
Right.
able to remove the pressure of performance anxiety and
Right.
premature ejaculation before I was able to heal and reconcile certain things in my life and certain traumas and how they affect me. So I want you to talk about how that shows up in relationships and when we are sexually traumatized, and how that can create a dissolution of a relationship.
Oh my God. I mean, I wish we had more time, but just in the little time that we have, um, trauma affects us in ways beyond the encounter that we have. And we can move on from it. We can get great jobs, we can have great careers, we can be great fathers, but those traumas still impact us. And one of the biggest ways it manifests itself is through sex. So I see a lot of people in my clinic who suffer from sexual dysfunctions. You mentioned three of them: premature ejaculation, performance anxiety, pain during intercourse, a lack of, full erections. All of those things are manifestations of traumas that you've experienced. So usually when I see my clients, I go through a full history to figure out where this manifestation started, what's the root of it. And I think, as you've so rightly said, as men, whether gay or straight or bisexual or questioning, we don't have these conversations because it's embarrassing,
Mm-hmm.
because it's shameful, because we feel guilt. If I tell a group of my friends that I can't get an erection, what is that going to say about me? What's it going to
Yeah,
say about my manhood?
yeah,
And I think because we don't have these conversations, we don't ever get to heal from it. And then we carry that into the relationships. You might become abusive. I've seen
hmm
couples in relationship, and this is another issue that comes up in gay relationships, where they're abusive encounters. And part of it's about deflecting from the issues that he has around his erection.
Hmm.
So
yeah,
every time he had a failed erection, or every time he had a failed sexual encounter, he would take that out on his partner, blaming them, beating them, calling them names.
Hmm.
And that's something that it's just so pronounced in our society and in our communities. We see lots of premature ejaculation, lots of erectile difficulties. Some of it is, people will actually turn to drugs as a way of self-medicating. If I can drink my way through this, then I can just get fucked and I don't have to worry about keeping my erection. If I can just, not use you know, a condom and use drugs, then it will make things better in a way. So there's so many facets of issues,
and
and when
avoid
you're
sex altogether.
and avoid sex altogether. That's another issue that causes relationships to end, is, you know, this avoidance of sex, or this denial of sex. You know, we're not going to have sex tonight, let's just go out.
Yeah, creating issues, and so the sexual conduct doesn't happen, and you don't have to feel that. So you know, there's
exactly.
just not digging into the truth, man.
The
That's a whole.
We can have a
It's
whole
a whole
conversation about
it is.
this.
It's a whole nother show. And
Right.
unfortunately, we only have an hour. And I do want to get to some of the questions that some of our viewers had.
Let's
and
do it.
yeah, one of the first questions I see here by Chris June. Hey, Chris. Within an open relationship, how did you all find resolve when other men and women challenged your relationship? And
No one challenged my
I'll go ahead and answer the question. Well, one is answered, but I'll go ahead and answer the question. And for me, it's pretty much the same. I have in our over 12 years of being together, there has never been one time that I felt like somebody has challenged our relationship. And I believe that's due to a lot of the vulnerability and the communication that we share, but it's also due to the level of self-awareness that I think that we have about ourselves. And I know that nobody from the outside can take anything away from me, and they cannot take anything away from our relationship. You know, me and Juan as a unit. And if there did become a time that someone challenged our relationship, it was really just more about what's going on between me and Juan, and not that somebody actually had the power to challenge our relationship. So I haven't experienced that. I believe that. Yeah, you go ahead, Juan.
No, I was just saying I agree.
Yeah.
I want to add something to that question, because I think it's a very important question. But one of the things that I would like to kind of just put to the forefront is that you obviously are a very public figure. You're a very public couple. And some people may know that you have, you know, a non-monogamous relationship, and others might not. And you're both very attractive men. How do you deal with situations where you may encounter someone who actually is tried to come on to you, or tried to come on to one or both of you in separate occasions? How do you handle that?
So for me, in which I am also interpreting that previous question as like flirting, or not necessarily challenging, but just like coming on, or, you know, making passes or whatever.
Or it might just be a blatant, I want to get with you.
Yeah. So I can be very flirtatious, kind of like for sport almost. But to me, it's just in the moment type of thing. So it's like, okay, that was fun, moving on. So when people make passes or whatever, sometimes I don't even recognize it, because I can be kind of
aloof,
flighty at times. But in those very direct moments, I just ignore them. Like when they slide in the DMs or whatever, just ignore, or laugh about it with G, or talk about it with G, or be like, you see this person, what they said or what they sent, or blah, 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 blah. To me, it's just par for the course.
Yeah, and for me, it's just, you know, I think in the beginning it's probably more challenging, because that jealousy thing come into play, and then it's like, well, what's wrong with me? You know, but then that's just all egotistical stuff. You know, I don't know that, you know, at this point in my life, I don't feel like it bothers me at all. You know, Juan is, like you said, Juan is very attractive. I don't think I've ever really felt disrespected by anybody in our space or anything like that. I don't feel like Juan has ever felt like he's done something that's been disrespectful. So I mean, to be honest with you, Machell, I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's just because, you know, we've been together for so long, and we have such sense of security with one another, but it does, and nobody can really kind of like have an effect on what we have going on with each other. I'm able to go back to what Juan said. I'm able to not take things personal, you know. So somebody that's doing something with Juan or whatever Juan is doing has nothing to do with me. I know who we are, so.
I like that.
So J Farm D. This is a very interesting conversation. However, it sounds like the agreements in open relationships were made to mitigate deception from the beginning. I'm not sure I understand.
To mitigate it.
I think I know what he's talking about.
To prevent cheating.
No, I think what he's talking about is the fact that when we first started in our relationship, we talked about our sexual roles and what we enjoyed sexually. And in the beginning, I had shared with everyone that Juan had conveyed that he was a little bit more versatile than he really was.
Right.
Because I think, you know, when we talked about this, one of the things, you know, so well, you were top or bottom, verse, whatever the case may be. And I say, well, you know, I'm fully versed, you know, I'm down for whatever, you know. And Juan was like, well, I'm a top, but I'll do anything for my man.
Right.
And I think that he was speaking from truth. He was speaking from truth. This is a new experience for him. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So he thought that he was willing to do whatever for my man, but he found out that he wasn't allowing.
Until you took your trousers down, and he's like, oh.
Or
maybe
not,
not.
you know, and not even you said it's about capabilities too. So it's not just willingness, because the willingness was there, the desire was there, but the capability was not there. And that's another thing.
And for whatever reason you may not be capable, that could be anything.
Right.
But at the end of the day, what he's talking about is deception. For me, it was never deception. I didn't feel like Juan deceived me, but I feel like Juan was truthful in everything that he had said. And sometimes we bring experience into our lives. And I also feel like, and I also will say this, I do think a part of that was Juan was, and we've talked about this, Juan didn't think I was that serious about needing to penetrate as well until later on in our relationship. Because when I first met Juan, you know, bottoming was new to me. You know, that was new to me. And when I had met Juan, I was like, yeah, I'm fucking dropping it like it's hot. You know what I'm saying?
All right, shit.
But you know, after a while, I'm like, oh, after a couple of years, I'm like, okay, now, you know, I am this too. And so then it became a thing of me claiming it. You know what I'm saying? And you need to do this for me. You know, because you are my man and this is your duty, and you said blah, blah, blah. But I don't think it was ever about deception. It was just about, go ahead.
So I didn't receive that question that way. I received the question that, like, our conversations for openness were mitigating the possibility of
a cheating
of a cheating situation.
I can see that, yeah.
So from that vantage point, for me, it was never about you cheating on me. It was about you being fulfilled in ways that I knew I was incapable of fulfilling.
Right.
That was the 100%. The only reason, like, if that wasn't a part of the equation, I would not have agreed.
Yeah.
And
that really just was opening. It was really just a opening for what was to come.
And I also think, just to add to that, even in open relationships, there can still be cheating.
Oh, yeah. You can break agreements.
Right.
You can break agreements, you know.
There's a story about that.
Is there? Or even the broken agreements. It's like there can be rules that weren't made. You know, we talked about being open, but you didn't tell me that it couldn't be with your best friend. You never talked about that.
Right.
If it was somebody we know,
out of town, the contract.
Right. So I mean, there's always, the context is everything, and also it's just about being honest with each other, and you can't be honest with each other unless you're being honest with yourself.
That is a great way to end the conversation. Such a good conversation. But you know, no, we're going to end this here, and we're going to wind down. But I want what I really want people to take away from this conversation is it's not about open relationships. It's not about who you're having sex with, but it is about being completely transparent in your relationship and vulnerable in your relationship. And it's just so important to be honest with your partner about your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your desires, because a lot of things I think that we go into relationships feeling certain ways and thinking those are wrong, and to go into the relationship feeling. But 9 times out of 10, I think that if we're able to be vulnerable and share those things with our partner, we'll find that we're more alike than different.
Right.
So I encourage everybody to be vulnerable. I encourage everybody to seek therapy individually and for couples.
Yes.
It's been extremely tremendous help for us. It's taught us about ourselves. And yeah, so Machell, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I am pretty sure, like I told everybody else, this is the end of the Black Enough, Man Enough Live series, but I will be doing some things in the future, and I will definitely have you back on to have conversation.
Absolutely.
To the level. Go ahead. You want to close?
On my podcast for one of the episodes, so I'll keep you updated with that.
Yeah.
No, I would love to. I love to run my mouth. Juan loves to run his mouth just as much as me.
Can you tell?
No, I can literally talk to you guys for ages. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for.
It's been so weird.
You're sharing your life with your audience. That's just incredible.
Yeah. You're welcome. And Juan, I thank you again. I told you at the beginning of the conversation, like, if there was a such thing as somebody being their everything, you will be my everything.
80/20,
I love you to death.
80/20.
Thank you for going along this journey with me, this vulnerability journey, and challenge us both. And thank you.
You're welcome.
Everybody else who's watching, thank you so much for joining me. Like, again, this is my last installment of the Black Enough, Man Enough Live series, but stay tuned. There'll be some announcements next week on some other things I'm doing. Please, if you haven't picked up the book, pick up the book. If you have picked it up, thank you very much for the support. I can completely love you guys. I want to thank hashtag WFH for partnering with me on this. They've been definitely instrumental on this journey of releasing my book. Friday, I'm having a book signing and after party at Virgil's. So if you're in Atlanta, come, bring your mask. We will be social distancing, and I'll sign a copy for you. I'll have some copies available on site, or bring your already purchased copy and I'll sign it for you. But yeah, that's it. So thank you for joining us tonight. Peace.
Bye.